right, welcome to the AI Frontiers. I'm Lucian Fogoros. I'll be your host for today. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for the sponsors that made this event possible. I'm dialing in from our offices in Cleveland, Ohio, the heart of U.S. manufacturing. Now, half of U.S. manufacturing base is within a half a day worth of drive, which is a perfect place to host a conversation about the future of AI. The agenda is packed, so I'm not going to go through all of it. I have two asks from you folks is to follow IoT World on social channels and engage. If something inspires you, share with your own community, and please take the survey on IoT World systems and industrial AI. All the speakers are live, and as such, we made a commitment to you that we will answer all their questions. So feel free to post them in the Q&A. To kick off the sessions, we'd like to bring the moderator for today, the co-founders of Swiss Cognitive. So Dalit, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. And I'm super sorry for this inconvenience. The only thing what I can say, it shows us again how dependent we are on technology. Even though I'm in Switzerland with a super robust infrastructure, I'm happy to be back. So also welcome everyone and thank you for being with us today. Huge thank you and hello from Switzerland. Please let us know in the chat where you are joining us from. Now, as I'm not sure I heard everything what you said already with the housekeeping rules, tell me, shall I go through that, Luciano, or shall we get into the introduction directly?
Let's go ahead with the introduction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so first and foremost, I'm happy to be your moderator. I'm Deloitte. I'm the co-founder of Swiss Cognitive, and my passion is AI. Not only that, to me, it's important to empower companies and their employees to understand the power of this technology. Together with me, we have Chris, Jonathan, and Anthony. And I would like you guys to introduce yourself, starting with Jonathan. The stage is yours.
All right, thanks, Dalit. Hi, everyone. Hi from Germany. My name is Dr. Jonathan Spitz. I'm the founder and CEO of Gauss Machine Learning. I have a background in mechanical engineering, PhD in robotics, and I've been founded Gauss ML about 5 years ago to help manufacturers get the most out of their machines. Coming a little bit from my experience during my postdoc, where I started developing a unique small data approach to AI, and then also applying different AI solutions during my time at Bosch. I decided to create Gauss ML to support manufacturers, big and small, to be able to get the most out of their machines with the right process parameters. And we have been already very successful with multiple applications in laser cutting, welding, machining, injection molding. With just a few experiments on the machine, we can help our customers get 15-20% additional productivity.
Thank you very much. Anthony?
Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Vigliotti. I am the Chief Product Officer at AdLib Software. I'd like to give a little short story about how my career started. We won't go through the entire lineage of my life, but as a youth, I really wanted to become an engineer. Everyone in my family, my relatives said, you're an engineer. So I went to school for engineering. Got my first job at Xerox. What happened was I spent very little time engineering and a lot of time focused on documents, the chaos, the mess, what we did with drawings, how we handled engineering change notices, how we did and inputted our data logs. And what I found out was at this time, there wasn't a lot of technology around document processing, workflow automation, and so on. So while working at Xerox, we had OCR at our disposal, buildings full of multifunction devices that can scan an image. And we set up a little process that would allow us to digitize and automate workflow so that engineers could spend more time engineering and manufacturing could spend more time manufacturing. Ultimately, we got to the point where I said, you know what, maybe this engineering thing isn't right for me. So I put down my mechanical engineering pen and paper, went back to university and got a master's in information technology. And from that day forward, I've been focused on the intersection of how technology can improve business process, and in this example, manufacturing business process. So I then moved to Notable Solutions, Nuance Document Imaging, Kofax, now Tungsten Automation. And during that entire professional career, I've literally stood at the intersection between improving outcomes for workers, improving their experiences, while driving maximum value out of the documents and data that are locked within. So I currently hold the position of Chief Product Officer at AdLib Software, where I continue that lineage of using AI to improve business outcomes, mostly driving data accuracy and trust. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Anthony. And dear Chris, the stage is yours.
All right, appreciate that, Dal. So by way of quick background, I started my career, at least the first couple decades of my career, in the military industrial complex, so very much knee-deep in manufacturing. Specifically, I was in the Marine Corps, US Marine Corps. I'm now out of Miami, fully retired, and in my probably third chapter of life. So after the Marine Corps, went to Deloitte Consulting out of DC, ran an automation practice for them. Robotic process automation, conversational AI, and blockchain were the three solutions that I drove to market. One of those vendors was a private equity-owned company called Kofax, now Tungsten Automation, where I was their chief strategy officer, really focused on intelligent automation and workflow. And then took on the CEO role of a small startup company called Base64.ai, really focused on AI document and data automation. And then about 3 months ago, was recruited into AdLib as the CEO. So AdLib is, as Anthony started to touch on, is a software company. We focus basically on being the accuracy authority in AI-driven document automation for highly regulated industries, which definitely covers manufacturing, energy, life sciences, many of the industries that are presented and covered on this webinar. So what I would like to do is spend a few minutes up front just setting the stage for what I think is going to be a phenomenal panel, really focused on building data accuracy and AI trust in smart manufacturing. So I think this is not just timely, but it's essential, because as I think all of us are feeling and we're starting to see, the investment and the excitement is high, but the real transformation hinges on data that you can trust, which is what the team here wants to focus on. So I'm going to jump in, and I promise you, this is not, death by PowerPoint. I hope these are a few studies that you will find interesting and that you can actually start to use to help you advance your agenda. I know a lot of the agendas, in order to be advanced, depend on strong data points and perspectives. So I hope that that's what you're going to get out of this. But again, 5 minutes here, but I'm going to use these two studies. Each, again, should provide some quantitative data to support the decisions that you're likely making, but also challenge conventional wisdom. First is Deloitte's, and I'm a little biased, obviously, coming from Deloitte, but Deloitte's 2025 Smart Manufacturing Survey. This will really quantify what's truly at scale on factory floors. And then we have MIT study. This is making its rounds right now. But the 2025 State of AI in Business. And this is really going to get to why most GenAI, generative AI pilots are missing deliverable on the bottom line. So it's not having the bottom line impact that many had thought it would, at least at this point. And we'll get into the why. But I think together they paint a very vivid picture on the state of adoption and the barriers to realizing value. We'll start with the MIT study. It looked at a few hundred publicly traded companies that are deploying GenAI. It found that 95% of enterprise GenAI initiatives show no measurable P&L, profit and loss impact, with only 5% of task-specific tools reaching production. Now, that's clickbait in and of itself, but you need to be mindful that they pulled this data by sifting through public company S1s, quarterly earnings reports, 10Ks, various other SEC filings. If it was noted in those documents that a company was, one, investing in GenAI, but two, nothing was noted on ROI, then they considered it no measurable impact. So you can obviously start to see that this could just be a timing thing, not necessarily they ran the full project, the experiment, and ended with zero ROI. So it could just be that the project simply hasn't delivered the intended impact yet. But I think it's important that at this point in the cycle, adoption, again, is high. Transformational impact is low. What was also interesting as you dive into this report is it's very explicitly stated that external partnerships are successfully deployed twice as often as internal builds, suggesting, as most of us hypothesize, that collaboration is a faster path to scale with newer technologies. But there's another reality that's starting to set in, and we all are very aware of this, and that's the same concept as shadow IT, but now we're seeing it in shadow AI. In the study, it points out that nearly 90% of employees use large language models personally, compared to just 40% of companies with official subscriptions. That means, so that delta, that means that your workforce may already be ahead of your enterprise AI strategy, and that creates both risks and opportunities. Harnessing that energy responsibly, I believe, is an onus that we as leaders have. It's a leadership imperative. So the workforce is more ready for AI than many of us give them credit for. So if you look into the report a little bit more, you can really dig in and you begin to get to why GenAI pilots are failing. And the top reasons aren't surprising because we've been through this, especially those on this webinar, much like me, have a little bit of gray hair or not as much hair. It's change management. It's lack of executive sponsorship. It's poor user experience and output quality concerns. But as we just covered, employees are already using cutting edge consumer AI tools every day. So their expectations for enterprise AI are very high. The days of handing employees static, clunky tools isn't going to cut it. So to scale AI, we have to deliver both accuracy and usability at the enterprise level. So that's the MIT study. There is a lot in there. What I want to do now is pull it down to more AI in manufacturing and where we are. And Deloitte's survey really gets to the smart manufacturing of 2025. And essentially, despite challenges, this survey found that the commitment is undeniable. 78% of manufacturers are allocating more than 20% of their improvement spend to smart manufacturing. And even more telling, 75% of those budgets will further increase. 0%, so 0 respondents expect a decrease. So again, we are early in this cycle. A lot of these projects need time to deliver ROI, but nobody is getting impatient because this is largely a top-down meeting with a bottom-up need mandate. So the investments are flowing. The question is whether we can channel it into initiatives that deliver those measurable outcomes. So looking ahead, last slide, looking ahead, Deloitte's survey provides really strong data that manufacturers are prioritizing investments in automation and data, which is why this panel is extremely relevant, factory hardware, analytics, scheduling, quality management, and sensors. These are the foundations for AI. Until we have accurate connected data, AI outcomes simply will not be trusted. So the bottom line is, I believe we're witnessing the paradox of our time. And I've been through a few of these. I think this is like the third step change in tech that I've been through. I think the massive investment in AI and smart manufacturing, but limited measurable transformation to date is driving sort of this need for collaboration to get to the ROI. The common thread in both reports, though, is to scale from experimental to scaled AI requires accurate, contextual, and trustworthy data, and that's what we're here to talk about. Dalith, I'll send it back to you to facilitate what I'm certain is going to be a great panel.
Indeed. Thanks, Chris, for laying the ground. I think it's very important. And to me, leadership imperative reflects the urgency spot on. Now, dear audience, you will get some polls during our conversation. Please check them out and participate. And now, Chris, let me start right away with you. It's generally expected that a lot of manufacturing data is unusable by AI today. So what are some controls that should be put in place to turn manufacturing data into trusted inputs, and which leading indicators tell you it's working?
Yeah, that was a Freudian slip, Dalith. You're right. A lot of this data is unusual. I think that the data, it's not just unusual it's coming out more complex than it ever has before. So outputs from other vertical SaaS type solutions that are creating things like 3D CAD drawings that we simply, weren't, 10 years ago really equipped to be able to process. But you're right. Most manufacturing data today isn't AI ready. And that's why smart factory initiatives often stall. There's many areas to focus on, but if you're time boxing me, and it sounds like you are, it's just 90 days, I would focus on very pragmatic controls or initiatives. I would first start by standardizing how you capture the data, meaning I would harmonize the formats across things like CAD drawings, inspection logs, SOPs, so that way we're not feeding AI a patchwork of incompatible files. Second thing you might do is validate quality at the source. So that old adage, trash in, trash out. Use automation versus manual controls, sort of a no-brainer. I think that will help you flag the missing fields. That'll help you flag inconsistencies, non-compliant entries before they flow downstream. The idea here is that, quickly and consistently drop bad data from ever entering your system. Third thing I would do, again, all within 90 days, is I would focus on governance. I know the audience here, primarily, senior decision leaders, so governance is well within your wheelhouse. So this is about access, it's about lineage, it's about accountability, so that way every piece of data has an owner, you know exactly where it came from. I would wrap up probably by testing that your controls are working. I would look at leading indicators, not lagging indicators. You should start to see things like exceptions and workflows trending down. Straight through processing and automation rates should trend up. And most importantly, no dig, Anthony, your engineers will stop second guessing the data because they trust it. Those are a few signs that I think you've turned the corner in a short amount of time and therefore have a foundation to build on. But turning the corner on that raw, messy input to more AI-ready data that can deliver real manufacturing outcomes, I think is the imperative here.
Okay, thanks. Let us stay a little bit with that topic. Anthony, in smart manufacturing, data integrity is obviously mission critical. So how should organizations think about preparing their data for AI to ensure these trustworthy outcomes?
All right, thank you. Before I answer, can you confirm that you can hear me? I've changed an audio setting.
Yes.
I do.
Perfect. Thank you. So to answer the question, great question. So the first thing I think we need to recognize is that most of the large language models that are publicly available are trained on the public internet. And that's great for certain use cases within manufacturing. But most of the use cases that have the largest value to an organization require that we're actually using documents that are from within the organization. So your intellectual property is within your documents. It's your standard operating procedures, it's your manufacturing procedures, it's your CAD drawings and your SolidWorks files. So the first problem is really that of consumption. How do you get those documents that are mission critical to your line of business and your manufacturing processes into an AI platform that really isn't ready to consume those types of files? All right, so having a system that's able to do the file conversion required in order to get those documents into your system is probably the first largest problem that most organizations are going to solve. Now, the second thing that may come from that is after you have these documents that are now AI ready, quote unquote, you have to be able to use them in some way that drives accuracy and trust. So when you take a look at some of these engineering documents or these manufacturing documents, they're relatively complex. They're 3D models, they're documents that have embedded images, the documents themselves have made snips from complex file types like CAD files. You may have handwriting. So you need to be able to make certain that the documents as they're consumed are done so in a way that the large language model and AI systems actually can be successful in delivering an outcome. So there's a couple of techniques to do that. One is that you have to potentially chunk the document in the same way as you develop a table of contents, so your end users know where to focus in on that document. Whereas you read a book, there's chapters that allow you to logically segment certain things that are happening in that book. The same thing is true of documents. So as you're pre-processing these documents and chunking this information, the large language models will have a much better effect in getting to the outcomes that we expect. Okay, so really, the two problem pools is just getting your documents in and consuming them. And the second is taking the necessary steps to prep the data and to prep the documents such that the large language models and AI systems have the best chance of success. So really, this is a frontline strategy. And what we've seen most organizations do is stumble around this as they treat this as a back office task, just expecting that workers are going to figure this out. Unfortunately, they don't, or the AI systems stumble, and it leads to a challenge in some of the AI outcomes, either hallucinating or just not getting the accuracy that we expect.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you, Anthony. So the usual saying in AI is that there is no AI without vast amounts of structured data. But yet, Gauss ML achieves 20% productivity gains with minimal data from just 6 to 9 experiments on machine. Jonathan, how do you reconcile this apparent contradiction, and what does this mean for manufacturers who don't have extensive data infrastructure?
Yeah, so I think there is, we are definitely seeing a lot of applications where this big data AI is really making a big impact. If you look at things like ChatGPT or image generators, even video generators, you really cannot train these kind of huge neural networks without having lots of data. But that doesn't really have to be the way. And there are solutions out there that can help companies that don't have that much data still get a big benefit out of the small data that they might have, or even starting without any data at all. And this takes me back a little bit to my time at Bosch, where we were developing different kind of AI solutions to help the multiple manufacturing processes that Bosch as a manufacturing giant has. And quite often different divisions would come to us as a sort of AI department with their problems and say, oh, we have already lots of data. We have been recording data on this machine over the past 10 years. So we have lots of data. And then we would actually look at the data and we would see that the machine has been running and manufacturing a single product over the past 10 years with the same machine settings, which means while they have a lot of data, they actually have pretty much a single data point of things that they have recorded over 10 million times, maybe over the past 10 years. So there is first a big difference between what it means to have lots of data as a company. And there is definitely a lot of things that you can do, even if you have little data or small data, as we call it, and algorithms that can take you a long way with small data.
Thanks. Let me go back to Deloitte Smart Manufacturing Survey 2025. Chris, it shows that only 29% have AI and ML deployed at facility or network scale, and 24% have GenAI at that scale, even though 78% are allocating above 20% of improvement budget to smart manufacturing. So, Chris, what unlocks borders multi-site adoptions here?
Yeah, I feel like I'm being picked on with the whole set of Deloitte questions. But what really struck me about I expect it. But what really struck me about the Deloitte survey is that disconnect, that companies are putting serious budget into smart manufacturing, but only a quarter have GenAI or ML scaled across multiple facilities. That's, again, a challenge for leadership. In my experience, it's not the technology. It's typically execution at scale. A single pilot can run on local heroics, custom data wrangling. I think we've all been there before. Scaling to 10 or 20 plants, that requires a repeatable playbook. That's leadership. That means documenting what works, standardizing the way data is structured, creating reusable templates for both the tech and the change management elements. I think another thing is that you need to lower the barrier for adoption. If every new site requires, and I'm throwing this number out there, 6 months of integration and retraining, adoption will slow to a crawl. The companies that I see scaling are the ones that build common platforms and automation pipelines, so that way these new sites can onboard in weeks, not quarters. And I'd add maybe a third element to it to unlock what you call that broader multi-site adoption, which is to measure success in business terms, not tech terms. For example, if a plant manager can point to reduced downtime or faster line changeovers, they'll demand the rollout. If, however, it's framed as we deployed another AI model, it's not likely going to stick. It's not going to get the buy-in. So the unlock isn't just more money, it's making the rollout repeatable, lowering friction, and translating the value into language that operators and executives both care about.
Absolutely. I can only repeat the same. This is also the experience that we see at Swiss Cognitive with our companies. And this is where we really need to put the pressure or the power into all around change management, because at the end of the day, it's about the human being. And if we're not onboarding the employees, then we're not going to scale. And I lately read a report from McKinsey, actually, not from Deloitte. And these numbers really, I was really shocked. They are saying that only 4% of POCs are scaling in companies. Well, also reflects actually what you just said. So Anthony, as AI becomes more embedded in manufacturing workflows, what role should human workers play in validating and interacting with with AI-generated insights now when we're focusing more on the human side?
Yeah, you guys just referenced and mentioned how important the human element and component is when deploying AI technology in manufacturing or any industry or vertical for that matter. So it's something to be considered upfront. Chris, when he came into the AdLib organization, he reminded us very quickly that we're likely not to be replaced by AI, but another worker who has taken on AI and is being augmented by AI capability. So as we're deploying workflow, it's more important to focus on not just the AI itself, but how the AI and individuals are working together. Now, with that said, when we're talking about AI technologies and its outcomes, one of the worst practices I see is when manufacturing customers take the AI output and immediately push it to a human or immediately push it into the line of business application without first doing some validation that the AI indeed got it right. When you start doing that, the humans don't trust it. They see a lot of the errors that AI might be bringing forward and hallucinations. And if you took some simple steps to actually validate the data was accurate before you pushed it into your line of business applications or to a human, you'd get much better results. So how might that happen? There's steps that you can do to do data validation against known systems in your organization around quality assurance and supplier vendor databases. You can run some simple checks within the contents of the document itself. So if, for example, if an Excel file or table has a list of numbers that need to be summed up and totaled, you actually can run that math within technology to determine if the sum does indeed equal the total. And if it does not, then there's likely an error in one of the AI outputs. Once again, just catching errors before it makes it to a human. And there's various other things that you can do, such as multi-LLM comparisons. So running similar prompts or different prompts through multi-LLM technologies, and then comparing the results across those technologies to determine if there's consistency across the output. Once again, if there's not, you take additional steps to validate. The goal of a human is not necessarily to just say yes or no, AI, you're correct or incorrect. It's really for the individual to also learn something, to become part of that process, to become part of that interaction. So the days of a human in the loop process where it says AI found this, yes or no, if it's no, please correct, is probably a failing art. Really, the better approach would be to allow the end user to interact with that document, to chat with that document, to pull up nearest neighbor documents that are similar to documents that were just processed that are also being challenged, and to allow that individual to learn just as much about the process and to help inform the AI so it just gets better over time. So with a good AI implementation, it's not about sidelining your experts. It's really about making the AI a trustworthy partner to your colleagues and workers across your organization.
Thanks a lot, Anthony. I would like quickly to take time to see the results of the first poll. How many AI initiatives do you have in your immediate department? Does one of you want to comment on the results? Is it also what you see in your environment?
Yeah, I'm never one to, shy away from an awkward void in a conversation, so I'll fill this one. 0 to 2, I think, does feel right. Again, we're in the early innings, but each initiative is having widespread impact. So I wouldn't say the number of initiatives equals the likely impact. And I would give you an example. Just this week, I know we've got a lot of auto manufacturing companies represented today in the audience. I mean, just this week, I heard, Ford's AI cameras, cutting recall risk. And that's with AI Triz and Mavis for part installation validation. And that's across manufacturing lines. I heard GM's, down-to-earth AI approach around using AI for real-world gains. So AI written software code. And they're up to 15% of their code base. And they're very public about this. So GM, 15% of their code base, AI generated. Sharing with Anthony earlier this week, Coinbase, slightly different, but again, highly regulated industry. Our new financial digital rails, 40% of their code is AI generated. That would be considered one AI initiative, yet it is obviously having a tremendous amount of impact. So this doesn't surprise me. I actually like the focus. I would be scared if it was the opposite, if 11 plus was the leader here. Then I would say we're not focused on enough. And if everything's a priority, then nothing's really important.
Thanks for commenting. I would like to also see the results of the second poll. May we share them with the audience? Great, thank you. So, biggest blocker to scaling AI in your plans today? So perhaps Anthony or Jonathan, do you want to comment on that one?
Yeah, this kind of validates the response to my question and the experiences that we've had across manufacturing. There are many large language models that support your standard Office documents, your Word documents, your Excel files, your PDFs and images. But we all know in manufacturing, your file types go well beyond that standard Office suite. So being stacked with trying to get your intellectual property and the data in the hands of decision makers, when it's locked in a file format that's simply not supported, is just validation of what we learned in the market. So thank you for that validation. And there is tools, the silver lining is there are tools to help address that format chaos in a non-standard document. So help is out there.
Thank you. So let us go on with our discussion. Jonathan, large manufacturing companies with deeper pockets can obviously more easily invest in enterprise-grade AI solution. Is this putting smaller manufacturer at a disadvantage, or are we seeing something different with the newest generation of AI tools?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Dalit. So I think, especially with AI, as with every new technology, there are always a little bit of, let's say, winners and losers. Some people that can leverage it a little bit easier, or have more trouble leveraging it, or not the right budget to leverage it. I think we saw this a little bit with robotics, and now with upcoming humanoid robots. But I think AI is a little bit different because, yes, you can have some AI initiatives or AI solutions, AI consulting companies that come in and maybe they require 100,000 euros to run a POC or even more than that. But you can also, especially with LLMs, you can basically try these new solutions. I would not even call it an initiative, because an initiative implies that you're really creating a project and trying things out over many months. Manufacturing companies nowadays can really get a lot of help from AI, even from small solutions out there, on a wide range of topics and applications, going from the supply chain, going out there to look for more customers, or optimizing their process parameters, optimizing also the scheduling in their production, or how they're scheduling even the operators and the employees coming to the factory floor. So I think it's actually leveling the playing field a little bit more than all the technologies that we've seen beforehand.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. And this also brings us now to another topic, the probability of the success. And Chris, let's go into an MIT report. So you have some other views on there. There is an MIT report that just mentioned that 95% of enterprises Gen AI pilots are failing to show P&L impact. So what's your diagnosis, Chris, and what should manufacturers do differently to increase the probability of success?
Yeah, that is a very sobering stat on the surface. But again, I believe this is a timing issue, and the report gets to that. Basically, they looked at they looked at a couple hundred. Let's say they looked at 100 for easy math. They looked at 100 publicly traded companies, a lot of their S1s, 10Ks, and they saw Gen AI projects started, but they didn't see any narrative around P&L impact. They consider that part of this 95%. So again, I think this is just time will tell. But my diagnosis is that most pilots are, and I think there's a common trend here, and I'm starting to see it in the chat and the questions coming in from the audience, is that most pilots are starved of the right data. They're built on small, messy data sets that don't reflect the complexity of real operations. They rarely have business ownership. This gets to the change management issue, which again, I think is a common thread within the chat from the audience. So they rarely have business ownership. IT alone will run the pilot. It needs to be more of a collaborative relationship where business does have a degree of ownership. But line of business leaders aren't really invested in like the ultimate outcome when it's only IT driven. And I think third, success criteria are pretty vague. If you don't define what ROI looks like up front, you're never going to measure it. So then it gets to, well, what would manufacturers or could they do differently? One, I think pick one pain point that matters, gets to my earlier point around let's focus. So pick one pain point that matters, like reducing scrap, shortening changeovers, speeding quality checks, something that is important to you and would be easily communicated up. But next, I would feed the model clean, contextual data that you already trust, not a random slice of whatever's on hand. Then I would probably suggest that you assign a business owner with P&L accountability to the pilot and then collectively agree on what the metric is that you're going to move. If you do those few things, I think you're going to transform Gen AI from a science project into a business imperative. And I think that's when you'll start to see it show up on the P&L.
Thanks. We're hearing this word imperative for the second time today. And I think, again, this is spot on. This is what it is. It's a leadership imperative. It's an implementation imperative. Now, Anthony, with AI evolving rapidly and integration standards still maturing, how can manufacturers future-proof their data pipelines and AI investments?
That's a good question. So I guess the first thing I would mention is something that I struggle with every day, and I've sort of given up on, is trying to predict what's next with AI. I live and breathe it every day, and it just changes so fast that if you're trying to predict what's happening, you just like a deer in the headlights. You pause. The second thing I'll mention is this is not a single technology choice. So the best implementations I've seen are those organizations that have treated it like they require freedom. And Jonathan mentioned something like that. The ability to test and evaluate technology as required and to do it quickly is really, really important. So this is not like picking a single technology where I have Exchange for email and I have the VPN provider of my choice. You really should be leaving yourself open to pursue and evaluate technologies as they come. Now, with that said, we all need to know that these technologies don't have a known standard. So I'm not talking about your individual worker doing an ad hoc workflow in front of a ChatGPT interface. I'm talking about the IT projects that require a project and proper prompts and context setting and testing in order to streamline the way you run mission critical documents and business processes through AI. Being that there's no standard, it makes it really hard to test and evaluate technology. So aligning yourself to a vendor that can be, quote unquote, the universal translator that allows you to set the context and prompts in human terms, and to do that once, such that it can be consumed by any technology of your choice, is of large benefit, just not in production, but also to future-proof decisions you may be making months, weeks, years from now. The second thing I'll mention is also picking a technology for single document types may be problematic, because some of your documents are complex. Your documents have text, they have images, they have checkboxes, right? All those things potentially may require different large language model or AI technologies to get the best possible output. So aligning yourself to one quote unquote solution or technology stack sometimes is problematic. And the last point I'll leave you with is that of governance. So, when humans are doing work, there's a clear audit trail, hopefully. And if you're ever audited, you have the path, that you have the point to go back to them. When you go to AI, you do not lose the requirement to have an audit trail or lineage. So as you make your decisions and as you're building your business process, make certain that you're also considering, even with AI generated work, how you're maintaining and keeping with the standards that you put in place for data lineage and auditability. So I'd leave you with that. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Anthony. Now let's look a little bit further, Jonathan. If we're looking at the next 5 years, do you see manufacturing AI evolving toward more complex solutions or toward simpler, more accessible solutions?
Yeah, so I think Anthony was already getting into this, that the progress with AI is so quick that kind of having a crystal ball 1 year into the future is already complicated. 5 years is even more difficult or almost impossible these days. But I think we're likely going to see something that is a little bit of both. We're going to see systems becoming more complex, but at the same time delivering more value and becoming easier to use. And this is, I think it's very similar to what we've seen with cars, right? Cars, at the very beginning, they used to be nothing more than 4 wheels and a motor to move you forward. And nowadays, they have hundreds of sensors and pretty much a supercomputer on board. I think pretty much nobody in the room would be able to build their car from scratch nowadays. So they have become super complex machines. At the same time, they have become much more easy to operate. I think it was Daimler Gottlieb that said that he didn't expect there to be more than 1 million cars in the world at any point of time, just because they were so difficult to operate. Just like turning the thing to be able to start the motor and operating all of the oil and stuff. And they have become, of course, much more complex, but at the same time, you can now just ask your car to go park itself and it will do it. Some at least will do it. So I think it's a similar thing that we're going to see with AI, just systems becoming increasingly complex, but at the same time, delivering much more value, much more easily than what we're doing these days.
Thank you, Jonathan. Now, dear audience, before we're coming to your question, I would love to share with you the results of our last poll. Be honest, how much of your document traffic still needs human review each week? Now, again, who of you would like to comment on this pretty interesting numbers?
One, I love the setup here. You have to tell them to be honest. Insinuating that there's inherent distrust.
They're always honest, as AI is always honest.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, so this doesn't surprise me. So a lot of the document traffic still requires, human review. And I would say of the 38%, you could probably move that into the 50% plus. You could group those two. If it's not being measured, then likely a lot of that document traffic is requiring, a human in the loop. That's not surprising, but I think it does get to, and I don't want to get too far ahead, Dalit, but Mohammed is talking about AAS, so Asset Administrative Shell, and really developing a common denominator in terms of how you standardize data before you start moving it downstream, something I think Jonathan, Anthony, and I all have touched on. And I think this just reinforces the need for that to be the case. So addressing the data quality to get the AI accuracy needs to be done upfront and not downstream. There's a lot of inefficiency that I would see in many of the plants and the processes on this webinar, based on sort of, the 50%, 30 rating at 32, and then, we don't even measure it at 39. There's probably a lot of efficiency gains that could be had right there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
So
I would also, sorry for cutting you off. I would also add that this doesn't surprise me once again. Not the point that we don't measure it, but most solutions and customers are looking for, what is the straight through processing and what's the accuracy of that straight through processing? And in my opinion, it's one of the wrong metrics. And what you're seeing here is that the cost of getting it wrong in manufacturing is so high that even if you had perfect straight through processing, I think most customers would lean towards, I still need a human to visually check this very important fact or data point. So I think this really more leans towards how do you do the pre-processing and the post-processing validation to ensure you're getting it right, so that the organizations and the decision makers have the freedom to kind of throttle back the amount of times a human needs to be involved. So I think over the years, what's going to happen is, as the pre-processing and post-processing validation gets better and the trust and accuracy gets higher, we'll have the ability to throttle back the ability for humans to get in the loop.
Yeah, this is a replay of robotic process automation 10, 12, maybe 15 years ago, where enterprises were reluctant to bring in these RPA robots, whether it was working on your desktop, running tasks in an automated fashion for you, or server-based, so in the background. But there was an inherent distrust in what these robots were going to do, even though they were rules-based. Now you have AI, which is generative in nature, but also probabilistic and not deterministic. And so this reinforces the fact that there absolutely needs to be humans in the loop, but it's where do you have them? And I think, if you inappropriately are applying them to the transactional piece of the workflow, as opposed to the knowledge piece of the workflow, then you're probably getting it wrong. You're probably underutilizing your workforce. And so that's how I would think about it, like on balance between transactional and knowledge within any workflow, within like a plant and the operations within a plant. But if you just start to bucket the value of the work that needs to be done in transactional and knowledge, and then where can I apply technology, you obviously want to take out the transactional stuff as quickly as possible, which moves people naturally, and people naturally gravitate towards knowledge base. That's where they find purpose. That's where they found value. That's where they want to go home and tell their families, hey, I accomplished this knowledge-based work, not I accomplished, pushing paper all day.
Thank you. I like to see how also our audience are commenting in the chat during our discussions. We have one question from Björn Hansen, and I would like to point this out. The biggest hurdle for POCs to scale in companies is often the lack of change process and change mindset, what we discussed before also, not technical limitations or economic viability. And I think this is a very important point, the whole change process, the human in the loop. I mean, we're talking a lot about that, and you mentioned it in the beginning, Chris, when you said it's a leadership imperative. One of the experiences that we have is what leads to difficulties is the lack of communication, the expectation management. That management has, here in Switzerland, we have around 50-70% of management who knows about the AI strategy, they're driving it, but only around 23% of the employees have this in mind. And this lack of communication is also very difficult. I would like to discuss a little bit more with the three of you about this, what Björn said, the limitation, that it's not about the technical limitations, it's really about the change process and the involvement of the employees.
Yeah, I can start here, and I'll reflect on something that when Chris first joined AdLib, that he instilled in all of the AdLib employees. The use of AI is not cheating. It feels like the pervasive nature of people's like, oh, I can't tell them I'm using AI because maybe I'll be replaced by AI, or they'll feel like I'm not smart enough to do the work on my own. Really, like I think that changed from the top so that employees and our workers feel like embracing AI is the right thing to do. And once that started happening, we really started to see an acceleration of the types of initiatives and the types of projects and the impact that those projects were having across the organization. So I just wanted to reflect on one good change management practice that we put in place at AdLib.
Yeah, and practice. So appreciate that, Anthony. Never thought of that. I think it's just inherent in how I go about business. But I'm about business speed. I'm not risk averse, but I'm calculated risk relative to the market, the potential, and then obviously competitors in the market and how they're moving. But what I would say is the very pragmatic, the practical element of that is I showed up during our weekly executive leadership team meeting and I said, this is how I have used AI over the past week to 10x myself as CEO. And they were just bullets on a slide. And I was very transparent on how I used AI to help me make decisions, create frameworks, be a brainstorming buddy. And so I'm glad that was the intent of it, was to scale that across the organization. So I think every function right now, they show up saying like, here's how much we got done this week and here's how we were able to do it.
Yeah. So
thank you.
So we saw lots of people from many countries around the world commenting here. Would have been nice to have a poll just to see, like, is change management really that important for different companies across different parts of the world? I can definitely talk from my experience working with lots of German manufacturers. And we say, so selling AI solutions to manufacturing companies is already a big challenge, but doing that in Germany double so, right? It's a very conservative kind of mindset. But even in Germany, we still see some companies where they see from the, we don't even call it a pilot project, but just like the first test optimization where we help them run one optimization on their machine within like 2 or 3 hours. They see the value and they immediately take it off of our hands and want to start using the product, want to start using Optimizer, our solution, to run optimizations on their machines. And they have already, they're the typical early adopters. They have the idea of, where can I now use this new tool that I didn't know before existed? Now I know I can do something with it, and they just run with it. And then there are other companies where they see maybe 15 or 20% increased productivity from that test optimization, but they're still a little bit, let's say, cautious and saying, okay, but if I now need to convince my operators to use it, maybe there will be some friction. I don't know where should I use this? So there are these different approaches to implementing a new technology, and I think the ones that are really open and see the value immediately, those are the ones that are getting the most value out of these new technologies.
Thanks a lot. Unfortunately, we have only 1 minute left. We will take all the questions and try to come back to you with the answers. But as a Swiss person, I'm going to try to be very sharp on time. So let's share the last question in the chat. And I would like to say a huge thanks goes to our speaker, Chris, Anthony, Jonathan, and also Lucien from the beginning for their amazing insights and knowledge. Again, a thank you to AdLib Software for sponsoring our session. Your support ensures we have all these great insights to share. And please, dear audience, don't forget to follow IIoT World on LinkedIn and X. Stay tuned. Also connect with us, with all of us, with the experts. And I want to point out that the IIoT World is running its annual survey on building IIoT system. It takes only 6 minutes to complete. Please participate. You will help all of us, and we're gonna obviously share the results with you for free. As we say at Swiss Cognitive, share for success. Together, we're going to be much stronger. So now it's time to move into the next session, agentic AI in manufacturing, from co-pilots to automation to autonomous system. Thanks for being with us and have a great day.